Hello and welcome along to this ILC ClaimsTech 2022 interview with headline sponsor SightCall. Here we speak with Max Hurd, Director Solutions Engineering UK and Northern Europe at SightCall, to find out more about what powers the leading cloud platform for live visual support. Enjoy the interview. Okay, thank you very much for joining us today, Max. Really appreciate your time. And how is the world treating you?
Very good, thank you. Lovely weather this time of year as ever, and very exciting times at SightCall as well. So looking forward to working with our customers to kind of define and improve some of these insurance processes that we've been kind of itching to do for about the last year or so.
Fabulous, and we will come on to that in more detail in due course. But again, life at SightCall, just tell us a little bit about what's happening with yourself. I mean, your own job remit role, how is that kind of has evolved in recent times? And just give us a little bit of flavour of Max Hurd in the day-to-day world.
That's a great question. So I started at SightCall about 4.5 years ago when we were very much a visual assistance platform first and foremost. So that was about provision of very high quality, very robust video to allow things like remote adjustment. So not having to send out an adjuster to site, and some kind of features and functionality that enables that as well, but with a core really of visual assistance. So in the past few years, we've obviously had the pandemic where you had a huge amount of digital transformation that was delivered in really every industry, but the insurance industry was no exception, as the way that business could be done changed so dramatically. So that was a very, very hectic time. But one of the things that we realized was that customers sort of wanted a bit more. So it's become more a question of, okay, how can we improve those overall customer experiences, not just with visual assistance, but with self-service guided flows and also human guided interactions as well, where we help the adjusters and claims handlers at insurers provide a better service through this kind of visual interaction. And it's very much changed from being here's video to actually here's how we can improve your overall claims process, not just from an adjuster perspective in terms of going out to site, but actually really reducing that whole claims process and making it easy, both for the adjuster and for the policyholder as well.
Really interesting stuff, and the way the world has moved, should we say, in recent times, obviously. And how is that kind of coming out? Dare we say post-pandemic? I think we're safe to say that at the moment. But how is the world kind of reshaping in terms of that demand and that sort of continued evolution of the process?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we are out the other side of the pandemic. It's one thing that's really surprised me was that I had expected more of a bounce back. I thought that people would be immediately going back to that kind of in-person interaction, and we haven't seen that. And I think some of the improvements and the advantages to that kind of hybrid working model, they have become obvious, not just to people like SightCall. We've been selling this remote software for quite some time, but to the wider business world. And that has meant that kind of demand for that video within the insurance space. I think certainly in the UK, insurers are used to kind of video adjusting, but it's about taking it to that next level, and about making sure that we improve the customer experience as much as we can do as part of that process to keep really those end customers and policyholders happy.
It's great. It's great. This, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we were talking about, the first time we ever did a conference call, i.e. pre-pandemic, and it was like, wow, this is a Starship Enterprise. I've spoken to somebody on the other side of the world, and I've sat here talking to my screen, but it was few and far between. It was kind of, I'd use it if I really had to. And of course, now it's just completely day to day. It's everything that we do. It's still very much a part of our lifestyles. And I think, the benefits are being realized. And as you say, what you're also looking for is now what's the next step and what's the next level? How can I take this from end-to-end processing rather than using kind of, what was originally there? So it's interesting to see how it's all this technology is moving and how people's usage of it is adapting. So with that, and with what you've just said, latest developments within the SightCall platform and how it's all kind of knitting together and integrating?
So that's it's actually quite interesting from my perspective. Again, I come very much from the technology side of SightCall, and one thing that's been really good for me to see is the evolution of the digital flows product. So last year at the ClaimsTech event, you saw a version of digital flows which was very robust. It worked, and we've got people using exactly that kind of process in order to deliver and digitize their processes. What perhaps wasn't shown was the difficulty in getting to that stage and kind of creating those processes in the first instance. So one of the things that has really improved is our ability to provide insurers with the tools to create their own visual processes through a kind of drag and drop workflow builder. So we've gone from a question of, okay, we will work with you to produce these processes which will remain fairly static, or otherwise you're going to need quite a bit of help to make them work, to a scenario where actually you get these business users, so people, not coders here, not developers by any stretch of the imagination, who are able to kind of rapidly prototype using this kind of drag and drop workflow builder. And again, in the same way that we've seen the advantages to visual assistance in claims, we see the advantage to kind of visual drag and drop builders when people are actually designing those processes as well. And what that means as well is that as part of that process, we can add in all of these different features and we can kind of merge them and merge those kind of physical and digital worlds together. And that then allows us to provide amazing customer service and integrate things like AI image recognition or AI guided tasks, measurements, and also kind of connected journeys, which aren't reliant on just, say, for example, your claims management system. So historically, you would have a scenario where, okay, everyone could do, let's upload a photo to your claims management system from the web. Okay, that's been within the insurance kind of world for quite some time. The ability to do that, put it through some AI image recognition, get results, surface those to the customer, then maybe go through the process, the claims process to generate a claims form for the customer to sign, and then also to upload that information into a different system. As the customer sees all seamless and integrated, isn't something that's been particularly common in the insurance industry, certainly up until now. And again, that's where I think I'm particularly excited.
Sounds fantastic. And I do remember last year watching the demonstration at the ClaimsTech event, and hey, it was my kind of first exposure to SightCall's usage, fascinating, really clever kit. And you almost use AI sort of flippantly there. Now it's obviously a big thing within the industry, and it's the acronym that everyone kind of bands around at the moment. But is that integral? Is that part and parcel now of this kind of technology and where we're heading with everything?
I think it's getting there. One of the things that we have seen at SightCall is that if you have very consistent, repeatable scenarios with AI, motor's a great example, right? You have a number of identical pieces of equipment, cars, pretty much, and you have things that typically go wrong to them, usually in about the same way. They normally get whacked in the same particular part when you're in a crash, right? And you know what happens, and you've got a huge amount of data over time in terms of what that actually means. Where it can be a bit challenging is grabbing all of that data in more disparate examples. So what we at SightCall do, and we absolutely have this kind of AI functionality, and we can build and train models and work with insurers and other organizations to kind of build recognition and kind of next steps and kind of, I suppose the word would be kind of AI experts, fairly straightforwardly, but getting the data is and remains the difficult part of that. So what we do at SightCall is we tend to focus on either leveraging existing AI technologies or systems, or working with you to kind of create those models. But typically it is, if you've got existing either estimation tools or data, then we can kind of work with you to integrate that. There are people in this space that spend a huge amount of time just doing the AI piece, and we're very, very kind of happy kind of piggybacking off that. And indeed as well, helping to improve AI detection. So one of the things that we're very lucky about as far as being SightCall and the services that we offer, we take a lot of video, we take a lot of images, and that's something that we can then enable those AIs to get better and better as you identify, okay, this was a scenario when actually the property claim was £2,000 more in actual fact to perform a restoration on, and that kind of information you can kind of feed back to make that whole process better and better. But it's still something that at SightCall we want to connect with those AI tools mainly, unless there's a very, very specific scenario where we can build it ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, again, fascinating stuff, but using the kind of, the SightCall flow, if you like. So, the integration of various units, if you like, within a claims process.
Yeah.
What's the feedback from market? So is this kind of catering for what people want in the new world, or is this you understanding more about the claims process and therefore providing the solutions? A bit of a chicken and egg scenario, I suppose, but what comes first? Is it working with partnerships and getting feedback and understanding what they want?
So I think it is a bit of both, to be honest with you. So part of it is around working with our customers to understand what their processes are, how we could help them, but also to understand, okay, it would be great if we also had this particular feature, or it would be great if, this particular part of the process could be digitized. And we've worked that way throughout, certainly my history at SightCall. If I look back, it's been primarily the insurance industry that's driven a lot of the innovations that we've provided at SightCall. One of our earliest kind of digital signature features came specifically from an insurance customer request. And so that's something that we've just sort of built on. At the same time, one thing that we are able to do is also bring in knowledge from other industries and other verticals and say, okay, well, actually, the insurance industry is doing things in a certain particular order, and they're maybe not used to, for example, moving out of this kind of monolithic claims management system, one provider model. We're able to kind of stitch that up and know how to do that because we have more experience in other industries. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Great stuff. And with all of this, again together, kind of piecing the jigsaw together, the theme of ClaimsTech 2022, show me happy customers and the money. So what is ultimately kind of the impact of this kind of technology on the supply chain?
So in terms of the supply chain, one of the things that this does fairly obviously is that we make the claims process just quicker and more efficient for the customer. But it's more than that. It's about providing the customer options to interact with the insurer in ways that they want. So one of the things that we sometimes talk about, and as a wider theme here, is this idea of kind of two-speed IT. So the idea that you have customers and just members of the public used to provision of services, consumer services like Amazon, that are low friction, incredibly easy. You one click and then it's delivered the next day. There's a charge, there's a cost to that associated, but that's kind of what people expect from their own internal IT. It's what they expect from insurers as well. And so bridging that gap to what the insurers are currently providing and what the customer is really expecting and used to, is something where this really, really helps. Because if in this particular case, you don't want to talk to a human, you just want to upload some photos and some videos, you can do that. If you want to raise a kind of a request for an immediate live video assistance session, you can do that. If you want to schedule an appointment all within this process with an adjuster at some other point, you can also do that, right? So it's about providing those options to customers. And again, that impacts that impacts the customers. But one of the other things that we mentioned as part of this is that for the supply chain, there's benefits to not sending experts out on site, right? So we're able to not just remove the visits that we would typically remove through live video, but also remove those visits entirely. And potentially even remove the need for an adjuster to spend time on that call in the first place, right? Especially for those kind of simpler and low value claims. The other thing is that we really get with these self-service flows, but also with these kind of guided flows where the adjuster or the claims handler is able to walk through a particular process themselves with the customer. That's massively improving kind of auditability and compliance as well. So we know with self-service that the customer is on site, that they're at a particular location when they took photos. And we know that when an adjuster is running through one of these kind of human guided flows, that they're able to, that they've asked the right questions, that they've sort of tick the right boxes to a certain extent. But again, you've got an auditability going, okay, this particular task was performed at this particular time. These options were surfaced to the policyholder, et cetera, which again is very, very powerful indeed. One final thing, the impacts on the tech supply chain. One thing that we've seen is kind of an explosion of the number of insurance products on the market and who's providing them. And not necessarily an explosion in the amount of agility within insurers in order to hit all those new products and kind of markets as well. SightCall's no-code builder and kind of that drag and drop flow is allowing those insurers to bypass a lot of the kind of governance and security headaches that typically arose from changing claims processes, because we've sorted that out. And now we're giving business users rather than coders access to kind of design these processes, right? So you're a lot closer to the people who actually know the process when you're designing it, which is really important as well.
It certainly sounds like a win-win. And in terms of partnerships then, are there any kind of examples that you can use, i.e. who's using the systems at the moment and winning, or any references to certain organizations? Is it the insurtechs that are adopting this kind of stuff to speed up their implementation of claims processes?
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. It's not just the insurtechs. So if I look at Allianz, they've had savings through not sending out experts on site. So, for example, that's 14 million kilometers in unnecessary travel saved, 2,100 metric tons of CO2, and 200,000 hours of wasted experts' time. If we talk about cost there specifically, just in terms of the travel expenses, that's about 4 million euros that Allianz have been able to save. And that's really, really, that's kind of impact on bottom line. It's really, really important. But I want to mention again some of those stats in relation to CO2 and sustainability. So That's something that we've been able to track with Allianz specifically for quite some time, but it's a feature that we've rolled out to really all of our insurance customers, who are now able to see real time, pretty much, the CO2 and cost impact for doing a site call rather than actually sending out an adjuster to site. And this is really, really important, because this information and this sustainability calculator isn't just in relation to kind of, it's not just, okay, it's 20 tons. You're able to audit these and report upon these statistics so that you can contribute to sustainability targets, which are a massive thing, not just within insurers, but within, you know, most large organizations, to hit those kind of environmental and corporate and social and sustainability values. The other thing is, just from a kind of an adjuster, a claims handler, an employee perspective, being able to see the impact of using tools like SightCall in this way has really, really helped. Because again, you get that warm, fuzzy feeling, right? It's not just, oh, I didn't have to drive 2 hours down the M4. It's didn't have to drive 2 hours down the M4, and we saved, real world kind of carbon reductions, which is massively important.
Yeah, it's a huge area right now, isn't it? The ESG kind of side of things, and the sustainability, environmental piece, and it's really interesting. Again, you know, a system which was ultimately probably designed to solve another issue, how the benefits are now being reaped in another area as we move into that kind of realm of real consciousness, focusing on those elements. So next steps. What happens now with SightCall? What are the sort of key advances, as much as you can reveal? But what's happening?
Yeah, so I think one of the things is about just continuing to improve that digital workflows piece. So where we've got to is the ability for kind of those business users to be able to design those processes, but we want to make that even easier. So it's drag and drop at the moment, but we want it almost to be so simple that, you know, you're not just your kind of your citizen developers, your business users could do this, but really anyone who needs to build a process to be able to do that through SightCall digital flows. And I think that's going to bring out a lot more use cases and a lot more value, where people are maybe conscious of the kind of the time to digitize these processes. So the more we reduce that, again, the more we're going to be able to realize value from digitizing those processes. The other thing is that we're seeing more and more different systems being integrated into digital flows, and we're improving how we do that at SightCall all the time. So at the moment, if we want new systems, so for example, FedEx for shipping labels, kind of integration into ERP systems for automatic ordering, that kind of thing is taking not that long, maybe a few weeks to do. But having just launched SightCall Connect, we've actually launched a marketplace for these existing kind of new APIs and services to be able to be integrated into SightCall and be a part of that flow builder and be a part of this digital flows product without the insurer having to worry about integration, governance, and all the fun IT stuff that actually no one really wants to worry about. And I think that's going to be massively important. And again, this is where just multiple systems, and the ability to kind of link between them is going to reduce those. So if I look at a current claims process, we've said it in the UK, for example, that we can reduce the claims process from kind of FNOL to settlement with just video down to kind of half an hour, maybe 45 minutes for certain, low-ish value claims or simple claims. Where we've maybe struggled is integration into things like finance systems in order to be able to really get that whole claims life cycle down from kind of FNOL through to payment or restoration. And that, I think, is where we're going to see the next bit of benefit here. So being able to integrate with those finance systems, with the restoration systems as well. So, if we're working with a current insurer, which is not so much on the FNOL side, but is on the reduction in the claims process through not having to send out an adjuster to check on contractor works. So being able to have the contractor upload information directly into a claims management system, videos, photos, information, which is again actionable, and where alerts are driven when the contractor flags that there are issues, or they prompt certain questions. So if there are safety concerns as well. And that's not only reducing the claims process, which is great for the insurer, it's great for the supply chain, it's great for the customer, but also it's significantly reducing health and safety fines, or the potential therefore, because again, you've got all of that auditable information to hand.
Fantastic. So many use cases, Max. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks.